Commission. Very appropriate that we are here. She has been working on. Jane, did I get your pronoun right? Did I get your pronoun right? She? Yeah. Okay. I asked now. She has been working on the Rockville Town Center master plan, and so we will be talking about that. Among the first things we do is go around the room and tell us where you live and sometimes how you got here. I am Sunil Dasgupta. I live just outside the Rockville city limits. I am told. I've been reminded repeatedly. And I didn't understand these when we bought the house. I didn't understand these lines, but now I do. I wish I had bought a few blocks over. And my children's high school, Rockville High School, is actually within the city limits. So maybe that counts for something. I live. So technically, I live in Aspen Hill, and I actually drove from home to here. I would have taken the bus, but I'm coming from work, so it's like a roundabout. All right.
Keith Campbell, I'm from Bethesda. I work in car safety, and I appreciate the post that you guys push up about crashes.
Thank you. Did you take the train? Did you drive?
I actually drove here.
Oh, okay.
Normally I bike too.
Bike? Wow. Yeah. I wish Mark Priscilla was here. He biked off his meeting today.
I'm just with our
Thank you. Where are you from? Where do you live?
I live in Wheat.
All right. How did you get here?
I came with my check engine light.
Oh.
I'm Chris Farrell, active board member. I live in Kempville, section of B. And unfortunately, I decided to drive.
Yeah. Anybody that drives apologizes. We do it. Yeah. Grub Road is one of my favorite places because you know why. We Delhi.
I'm Joseph Crow. I live in the same house. And
Wow.
Go Scouts.
Phil Farino, I live in Silver Spring. I've spent some time today in the Wheaton Library, so because of the Wheaton Library is where it's located, I could go to Wheaton Library back to the Wheaton Station and change buses.
How far is that Wheaton Library to Wheaton bus station? Like maybe 10 minutes?
Metro
15?
Station. It's close, I think.
It's a little bit more you want to walk on a hot day.
And then walk.
Just let it pass.
Sean Robertson, ACT board member from, well, I should say for your discussion, just outside the city limits of Kensington. Technically town at Chevy Chase View. And I got here on the MARC train, although not from Kensington. It was actually an early evening event at Union Station, so it was a 20-minute ride out. And I don't know how to get back to my car at Porcelain, but we'll figure it out.
Okay.
Ben Ross, living downtown Bethesda, so I took the metro.
I'm going to, Lev, you want to introduce yourself?
Hi everyone, I'm Lev, I'm ACT organizer and tonight's techie.
Ethan.
I'm Ethan Goffman. I live in East Rockville, so I bike here.
Welcome, Ethan. Ethan also writes for Greater Washington, in case you want to check his work out.
Hi everyone, I'm Sija and I live in Rockville nearby North Bethesda, and I just took a ride on 101 here to Rockville.
Hi, my name is David Woodward. I live in Montgomery Village, and I drove here. I have young kids. I have a sitter right now, you know. I know. Not a good excuse.
No. It's every.
Well, I think there's a valid reason, because I think people who are opposed to our kind of stuff
well, did you drive here? No.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
like,
yeah.
it's complicated.
Yeah. Yeah. Kathy.
Active NIM, and I took the mark from Silver Springs to Peter.
But what annoyed you?
What annoyed me?
Yeah.
What was good was it was 20 minutes, and it was much better than the bus or metro as far as timing, less than half the time, but it was $6 instead of $2.
Oh.
So the bill was $14. That's the only bad thing.
$6 too.
Paying for the convenience.
Well, I guess Act's position is better to pay for it and have it than not to have it at all.
Always $1 across the board is such that somebody marked.
Lyons Raider works for the Rockville Planning Commission. So she's really at home. Previously, before working for Rockville, the city of Rockville, she worked at the Center for Smart Growth. And she's one of the star organizers in the YIMBY movement in Rockville. And I think for most people that follow this issue, she's quite well known. Jane holds a master's in public policy with specialization in city management and public finance and BA in economics from the University of Maryland. I just had my son there. Hopefully he turns out like Jane. And she was also on Westmore's transition team, advising on road safety and pedestrian safety, and awarding the 2023 Making History Award from the Montgomery Commission for Women. Jane, and she's going to talk about the Rockville Town Center master plan, which she's working on.
Yep. All right. Well, thank you so much, Sunil, and thank you to Action Committee for Transit for having me here. I owe Action Committee for Transit a lot. It is how I first got involved with Montgomery County advocacy back in, I think, 2017 or so when I was in college at University of Maryland. So I don't think I would be here today without ACT. So it means a lot to be able to present at ACT meetings. As Sunil said, I work for the city of Rockville, and I work on the long range planning team within the comprehensive planning division. So we are the team, small but mighty, that works on master plans. And this is the first master plan that will have been completed since the city's comprehensive plan was completed. The city's comprehensive plan is similar, although more detailed, to the county's general plan. Some of you might be familiar with Thrive 2050. And so the comprehensive plan is sort of Rockville's Thrive. And then master plans are focused on more smaller areas about their growth and development into the future. So it's really exciting to be able to focus on Rockville Town Center because it is an exciting place in the city of Rockville. And here's a picture of where we are right now. I included this picture in the presentation when we were originally going to be in Silver Spring, which is where I live, by the way, in downtown Silver Spring. But just so that we sort of understand the space that we're talking about, I love this aerial photo that was commissioned by Adam Pagnuko of Montgomery Perspective of downtown Rockville Town Center. And you can really see a lot of the town center area, though not all of it. And I think it helps to realize that town center is more than just town square, which a lot might be familiar with. Town square is where the library is, the ice rink is, a lovely place to sit and read a book or have dinner. But town center includes more than that. It includes mostly all these mid-rise, high-rise buildings that you can see here. We are sitting in, I don't know if this has a picture thing. No. Oh, okay, that's not the right button. I'm not going to try to press random buttons, but in the sort of bottom right-hand corner there is City Hall, so that's where we are tonight. Across the street, of course, is the County Council. So that helps you to hopefully know where we are. It's where we are right now. And here's a map of the whole planning area, which I recognize is pretty small and hard to read. But generally, the boundaries go along the eastern railroad tracks. The western boundary is north and south of Washington Street, although it's a little bit of a jagged boundary. The boundary goes almost all the way up to Manatee Street, where Montgomery College Rockville campus begins. And it goes all the way down to Richard Montgomery High School. So Richard Montgomery High School is within the planning area boundary. So it's a lot more than the town square area. And I'm going to jump right now into a little bit of history. I'm sure a lot of you probably might know this history better than me and maybe saw it happen. Stick with me here. I'm learning. I guess I should share that I've been in this job for almost exactly a year now, which has been fantastic. And in that time, I've been able to learn a lot about Rockville, but I'm also still learning. So I'm going to go in some big chunks of history here. Pre-urban renewal, so 60s here, going all the way back. I have some photos from the 1930s. Rockville was a streetcar suburb, as a lot of the places that are now what we think of as urban centers in Montgomery County started out as hubs on the streetcar network that funneled commuters into DC in the early 20th century. So some photos of that. We've got a map of the rail car trolley line that says from 1900 to 1935. And it went down and hit Bethesda as well. So it kind of parallels what we think of today as the western edge of, or the western leg of the Red Line. Got some photos here from the 50s and early 60s as well. And you'll notice that you don't recognize a lot of the buildings in these photos because they don't exist anymore. Because in the 1960s, Rockville town center underwent a pretty massive urban renewal. Urban renewal happened all over the country. It was funded by the federal government to basically tear down urban centers and replace them with shiny new urban centers, oftentimes catering a lot more towards private vehicles and pushing out communities of color especially. So this part of Rockville used to be a big center of population for Black and African American folks. The city's historical African American neighborhood is Lincoln Park, right across the railroad tracks here, and that remains a historic neighborhood, but a lot of folks were pushed out from Rockville Town Center during that urban renewal process in the 60s. So 90% of the historic downtown was razed. That includes the historic street network as well. So that street grid was replaced by the streets that you now see today. It removed 4 streets, razed 111 structures, relocated 165 businesses and 52 families, and added 1,560 garage parking spaces. Those are pretty overwhelming numbers. So this space was pretty irrevocably changed. And part of that vision for urban renewal included the Rockville Mall, and that was constructed in 1972. I have some pictures here of that mall. It was very brutalist, the brutalist architecture that we all know and love or love to hate within the DC region. And from the beginning, it was a pretty troubled mall. Pretty quickly, it faced severe competition from other nearby malls that opened, including White Flint Mall. And so it was closed actually less than 10 years after it opened in 1981, reopened again in 1983, but then was ultimately torn down in 1996. I really like this comic here that says Berlin Wall? No, Rockville Mall. And it says, evidently this was harder to tear down. So I think that really speaks to the behemoth that was Rockville Mall and some of the brutalist structures that continue to exist here in Rockville Town Center to its day. If you walked across the pedestrian bridge from the metro coming into Rockville Town Center, you saw some of those brutalist structures. A lot of those are pretty much empty or in bankruptcy and will hopefully get redeveloped pretty soon. So that was urban renewal, but then going into the late 90s, early 2000s, Rockville had the revitalization that created a lot of what we think of as Rockville Town Center to this day. So that includes the Rockville Center, where the Regal Cinemas is, and there was news that that was going to close, but luckily it seems like that is going to stay open for the foreseeable future, but that has a lot of the restaurants that people frequent there. The Rockville Town Square, where the ice rink and library is, was developed in the 2000s, pretty soon after the city adopted its new master plan for the area, which envisioned this sort of revitalization process. Hopefully you can see the before and after pictures here, right next to the master plan picture. A little bit small, but you can see the pretty dramatic change that went from no buildings to apartment buildings, these mid-rise apartment buildings that are still there to this day that were developed by Federal Realty. And this on the right is the sort of plan for that area, which includes the town square, these city-owned parking garages, A, B, and C, as well as several of these both apartment residential or apartment rentals and apartment condominiums. So that was all built together with a significant amount of public funding. Because it's so small, I'll read it here. $18 million in public financing was matched by $60 million in private investment. So we got a lot out of what we put in. The public funding commitments to date, when this was published, was $16 million. $6 million of that was from the city of Rockville, $6 million from Montgomery County, $4 million from the state of Maryland. And so that's a significant amount of money, and it's up to each person to decide, was that worth it? I think that there's a similar story, though, for revitalization of different areas, such as the revitalization of downtown Silver Spring, revitalization of Wheaton that's in process right now with the new MNC PPC building. That required significant public investment. So it's a sort of similar story to a lot of other urban centers in Montgomery County. And then recently, there's been a lot of talk about town center because it seems to be a place that continues to have challenges, has always had challenges ever since urban renewal in the 1960s and with the Rockville Mall. And this has led to the city investigating how to address these challenges. So in 2019, the Urban Land Institute in Washington did a technical assistance panel, and they published a report about Rockville Town Center and how it could be improved. So there were a lot of recommendations in that for how to make things better. There were a series of forums that the city hosted where residents could come and share their concerns about the challenges and the opportunities that they saw. And then in 2021, the city also published its comprehensive plan that I was mentioning earlier. And so that comprehensive plan has a planning element for each of the 17 planning areas within the city, of which Rockville Town Center is planning area 1. So that had a lot of recommendations as well for zoning and for future land use. That's the map that you see on the right there, is the future land use map for Rockville Town Center. We're going through a zoning ordinance rewrite right now that will effectively implement a lot of the zoning changes that are recommended in the comp plan. But that's expected to take another 18 months, 2 years, and so will likely be done after we've done this master plan. Ooh, that really skipped forward. All right, so that was the history. Now to go into some of the current conditions. Demographics of town center, the demographics I'm going to talk about here specifically for this planning area, the census block that overlaps with Rockville Town Center. It has a population of about 4,000, and that compares to Rockville's overall population of about 60,000. The median household income is $96,000, which is a couple tens of thousands of dollars under what the Montgomery County median household income is. 12% of households live below the poverty line, which is much higher than within the rest of the city of Rockville. But this does continue to be a pretty highly educated area. 69% of people have a bachelor or a graduate degree who live here. And if you know anything about Rockville, you probably know that it's one of the most diverse places in the entire country, not just the county, but the country. It was named by One study to be the 8th most ethnically diverse city in the United States, and that was just this year. And so you can see on this chart here a breakdown of the race and ethnicity in town center. 48% white, followed by 25% Asian, 13% Black, 13% Hispanic, 9% mixed race, and 5% some other race. So pretty mixed race, which is, you know, not it's not alone in Montgomery County for being a very diverse place. Silver Spring, Germantown, Gaithersburg are also pretty high up on that list. Regional competition. So similar to Rockville Mall facing regional competition in the 80s, Rockville Town Center continues to face regional competition to this day, especially with the construction relatively recently of Pike and Rose, just down the Pike to the south, and then just up the Pike to the north, Rio and Crown are both pretty big competitors of Town Center. And here is a chart that shows, it's a little bit wonky, but one of the main takeaways from that Urban Land Institute report was that the amount of people who live within the retail catchment area, or essentially the amount of people who live close by in Rockville, is a lot smaller than the amount of people who live around some of the other similar urban type centers. So usually the industry standard is for commercial square feet per capita is 23. And you can see here that downtown Crown is pretty low, but it's a little bit different than Rockville Town Center. But somewhere like Rio or Rockville Town Center, or somewhere like, yes, like, so low is better in this scenario. You can see out of these 4 options that Rockville Town Center has the highest at almost 28, ratio of 28. Somewhere like Pike and Rose is very, very low, meaning that there are a lot of people there to support the amount of commercial square footage at about 12. So in order to meet that industry recommended standard of 23 commercial square feet per capita, Rockville Town Center would need about 4,000 more people, which sounds like a big number, but is not impossible. It's something that could certainly be done with increases in density, and if Rockville were to become a place that was desired for more construction and redevelopment. But that's one of the questions that we'll be grappling with within this master plan is how will this area grow and evolve over time? What will population growth look like here? Mode share, because this is Action Committee for Transit, I wanted to include this. So this is, again, from the census. You have here, this is people's commuting habits of the folks who live within Rockville Town Center. And honestly, I was pretty surprised. I thought that this is pretty good. It's better than I expected. About 29% of people drove alone, but more people, 32.5%, used public transit, 7.7% carpool, almost 6% walked, and 21.3% worked from home. And this was in 2021, so who knows how the pandemic has shifted that around a little bit. We might expect maybe even more people are working from home these days. But I think that that's pretty exciting. One of the things that I think we'll be talking about with this master plan is if we will set a non-auto motor, it's a very long acronym, non-auto motorist drive, basically a percentage of how many people we want to not be driving by themselves. So I believe that for a lot of other places within the county, it's 55%, 75%, so downtown Silver Spring is really high. So hopefully we can set a goal to get that number to be even higher. Housing. So Rockville is a part of the Metropolitan Washington region, and the Metropolitan Washington region has a council of governments that has set housing targets for each of the jurisdictions that are a part of this region. And Rockville has a target of 1,000 additional housing units beyond what is already forecasted to be built between 2020 and 2030. So Rockville has said that Rockville needs to build more housing in order to meet its demand for housing to live here. The demographics right now, town center is about 75% renters, 25% homeowners. 21% of the housing stock is income restricted, meaning that it is technically seen as affordable housing. It's primarily multifamily buildings, as you can imagine if you've walked around this area, most having 20 or more units, so a lot of mid-rise and high-rise. A lot of that was built after 2000 in that sort of revitalization era. Similar to a lot of other places in the region, it's a lot of one-bedroom and a few two-bedroom units. That's where a lot of the demand is from young professionals. And housing cost burden is pretty high, higher than we would want it to be. Housing cost burden means that a household is paying more than 30% of its pre-tax income on its rent or mortgage. And so for owner-occupied units, 36% of people are paying more than we think they should be paying for their housing. And for renters, that's 42%. So that's pretty in line with what the rest of the county is like, and it's not necessarily good. So that housing affordability is certainly an issue in this area, although unfortunately that's not necessarily unique. Home prices, the median sales price for a home in town center is $388,000, and that's likely lower than a lot of the rest of the county due to the amount of condos and smaller units that are being sold here. And the median rent is about $1,762 a month, which is also pretty in line for other urban areas in the county. The Rockville Metro Station study, so I'll go through this a little bit faster, but essentially the county, city, and WMATA are undergoing a study of the Rockville station, not just Metro Station, because it's also a MARC station and an Amtrak station. A study to see what the future of that station should be like. So there are 3 design alternatives that have been narrowed down and selected by the Mayor and Council that they want to study, although the Mayor and Council still needs to choose a final preferred design alternative to move forward into the future with. And that's likely what we will include in our master plan. And there's several options. I won't get too into them here, but the one that staff recommended is called the Iconic Train Hall with High Rise. All of them are pretty supportive of transit-oriented development around the Rockville station. Right now, there's not a ton around there. Although one of the concepts is tunneling under 355 Rockville Pike, which would be quite a change. And the second concept is town station with high rise. So there's a webpage where you can learn more about what all those 3 alternatives encompass, and it's pretty interesting. You can submit comments about what you would like to see on it as well. So now I'll get into the 2024 master plan update. I say 2024 because we're hoping that it will be approved next year around this time. And I think I've talked about a lot of this already, but this is an update to the 2001 Rockville Town Center Master Plan. Master plans typically have a planning horizon of about 20 years, so we're pretty much right on time for when this one should be updated. It establishes a vision for future growth and development and public amenities, streetscapes, zoning, height, density, all of those types of things, affordable housing policies, etc. And it will build upon all of the work that has already been done within the comprehensive plan, within the Urban Land Institute report, within all these conversations that have been happening with the metro station. And it will put all of those ideas together to hopefully create a plan that is very actionable and can start being implemented as soon as possible. I will not read through these because this is a lot of text, but these are the master plan objectives that were approved by the Mayor and Council. I think you'll see a lot of things that are aligned with the types of things that ACT normally advocates for and likes to see. Enhancing links to public and active transportation options, providing an environment that's safe and appealing for pedestrians and bicyclists. All of this is a part of the goals for the plan. We also want to tie it in with other city goals and initiatives, which includes Vision Zero, which the city has that goal for a target of 2030. The housing production and housing affordability goals, which I talked about a little bit earlier. Racial equity and social justice. The city has a goal to incorporate racial equity and social justice into everything that it does. And then climate change, of course. last but not least, the city has a goal to reduce greenhouse gas emissions 50% by 2030 and be on track for net zero by 2050, which I believe is essentially aligned with the county goals. The county might be 80% by 2035, I think. So yeah, pretty aggressive goals there. And we know that land use plays a big part in how much land they're taking up, how much energy they use, whether they're using a car, and how much they use a private vehicle. So planning is a big part of addressing that. This is our timeline for the master plan. The red box is where we are now, outreach and engagement, which is part of the reason why I'm here talking to you all today, to spread the word that this master plan is happening. And we want to hear from everybody. That was one of the things that the mayor and council was pretty adamant about, is we don't just want to hear from Rockville Town Center residents. We also want to hear from people who visit Town Center frequently or who don't visit Town Center about what could get them to come to Town Center more often. It sounded like from a lot of people tonight that transportation was a bit of a challenge, and somebody who commutes here from downtown Silver Spring, I certainly understand the challenge there. But we're planning to release our report about our public engagement process in early October, and then we have 2 public meetings about it on October 24th and 26th, and that's sort of the public's last opportunity to say, yes, you heard correctly from us. These are the things that we want you to focus on in the master plan. And then we'll go into drafting the plan between then and Thanksgiving, and then it will go through the typical master plan process, which is first going to the Planning Commission, which has its own public hearings and work sessions before it ultimately sends their version of the plan to the mayor and council, who then repeats the process of having public hearings, having work sessions, amending the plan, and eventually approving and adopting it. So we're hoping to have that whole process completed by a little bit before this time next year, July 2024. It's a little bit of an aggressive timeline, but we're hoping to stick with it. We'll have a new mayor and council, and so this will be working with them on figuring out what they would like to have there, as well as with the Planning Commission. And then we will begin the work of implementation. And so as a part of that outreach and engagement process, we had some listening sessions that we've done with a lot of different people. Our 4 original kickoff listening sessions, we did these word clouds, and just so you can get a little bit of taste of what we've been hearing from people, we asked them the question of what's one thing that you would change about Town Center, and the size of the words here correspond with what people said the most. So a lot of people said density, and I think that a lot of that came from residents reading the ULI report and seeing their recommendations for how residents support businesses, because there's a lot of concern about retail closing or staying vacant, more housing, bagels and tacos, more retail. Parking is something that we've been hearing a lot of concerns, not just about cost of parking, but more about the accessibility of parking. A focus around to see more retail options, hardware stores, and things like that aren't necessarily just places to grab a bite. But yeah, so it's been interesting to hear from a lot of folks. I'm interested to hear from you all tonight, your thoughts and questions as we get into this process of writing the master plan. So if you would like to stay involved, you can go to engagerockville.com/towncenter, use the QR code, and then on that webpage there's a little box that I believe says stay involved or stay up to date, something like that. You can put in your email, and we send an email once a month that just provides updates on this project specifically. So that's the best way to keep up to date on when those public hearings are, when we're publishing new drafts of the plan, and all of that type of stuff. And you, of course, can reach out to me anytime. If you don't share a thought tonight, but you think of something that you really want to say later, feel free to send me an email. This is the email that goes to the whole comprehensive planning team. So that's it. All right.
Question. Rockville Metro stop is kind of to the right over here. And how does the plan for the county, incorporate the other areas into the Rockville plan so that the metro's got more going on all around it. Is there any kind of linkage that you see that would drive the change around the area, not just Rockville itself, but something that would tie in to make it all work better?
Yeah, so the comprehensive plan for Rockville talks a bit about that and has recommendations for the planning area that is just across tracks, East Rockville, and so envisions essentially redeveloping that surface parking lot that's there at the metro station with high-rise, as well as allowing for some like missing middle housing along the edges of East Rockville that's there. Excuse me. So hopefully that will create more things happening around the metro station on all sides, and not just the side that comes into town center necessarily.
Something to tie in or something.
Mm-hmm.
And who wants parking lot that needs to be developed?
WMATA.
So it's gonna be a WMATA decision.
So yeah, the WMATA does joint development agreements, and so Rockville Station is not very high on their list of real estate development projects that they want to do. There are other places in Montgomery County that they're currently more interested in, and other places around the region. I believe Forest Glen is pretty high on their list. So Rockville, unfortunately, is not up there. Twinbrook I think, is pretty high up there. But it would be great, I think, once we have this metro station like reimagined project done and things are more solidified, that might help to spur the process forward more.
You're basically working on with the town center plan. I think it should be more broader for the whole Rockville. Really, town center is just a small part of Rockville. So Rockville also includes what I still call White Flint. They call it now North Bethesda, but that's still Rockville because it's a Rockville mailing address.
It's not actually. It's outside of the city limits. It has the Rockville mailing address, but if you live there,
I mean that's a post office or someone else. Just like downtown Silver Spring, what they call downtown Silver Spring, it's not downtown Silver Spring.
Correct. But yeah,
I mean,
so North Bethesda is not the city limits of Rockville.
Arbitrary, or what Peterson Company called it.
And the city of Rockville did do a comprehensive plan that looked at the entire city limits of Rockville.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
I think it's too small of a footprint of the town center.
Yeah, so the city did that in 2021, so pretty recently. Yep. Any other questions? Yeah.
Do you happen to know, either in the town center or in the whole city, how many people own versus rent?
Yes.
Condos or whatever?
Oh, in the whole city.
Or just in the town center?
Just in the town center, it's 75% renters, 25% homeowners. But yeah, I don't know off the top of my head for the whole city, but it's a lot more homeowners in that ratio for the whole city than renters, I believe. It might be more like 50-50 or like 60-40 with homeowners. Yeah.
Saying the predominant boardings at the station are Metro Rail, but have figures on traffic and Amtrak boarding?
Yes, we have, and I'm trying to remember exactly what they are. The boardings are pretty low, honestly, from Rockville Station going on to Mark. So they're not super high. I think it's like a dozen or less people per day.
Do you think if the service was running in both directions all day, every day, that would improve ridership?
I would think so. I would ride Mark to and from Rockville, from Silver Spring, if it was bi-directional.
Jersey is real commuter rail.
Yeah.
Are you guys looking at zoning changes in the area right around the center, adjacent to the town center?
No, so there are some zoning changes that are recommended to the areas around town center in the comprehensive plan, and those will come into effect once the zoning ordinance rewrite has been completed. But for this plan specifically, it will stay within that boundary.
So are you anticipating zoning changes in that area?
Yes, not as a part of this project, but as a part of that bigger zoning ordinance rewrite project. Yeah, so in the comprehensive plan, there is a future land use map that's pretty broad about the types of land use changes that it would like to see. So it'll say something like, a lawn adjacent to Veers Mill Road, we want to allow attached housing. So like townhouses or other missing middle types of houses rather than just single family. And there's a little bit of that, mostly along the arterial roads within Rockville, as well as certain areas where it recommends a little bit higher density increases, especially around metro stations, Rockville Station and Twin Brook Station. And so once that zoning ordinance rewrite is complete, it will flesh out the details of like, what does that actually mean? Like, what does attached housing mean? What are the lot coverage ratios? How tall can it be? All of those sorts of things. So then there'll be a pretty big citywide like map amendment to the zoning code that will bring all of those zones up to date with how they're envisioned in the comprehensive plan. Oh, sorry. Yeah, if you have a follow up there.
There seems to be in Montgomery County a tendency to put medium to high density residential along arterials. Are there people looking at the safety implications of doing that? They're real.
Yeah, I would agree with that, and that's something that I personally advocate for, is that I don't think that people who cannot afford to live in a single family home should have to live alongside a dangerous roadway. But I don't know if there's necessarily anyone at the county or city level that's like actively looking into that. But I think it's certainly something with future planning initiatives, with the zoning ordinance rewrite initiative, that is going to come up more often, and that I think people are starting to think about more.
Quick follow up on that. Between the rewrite of the zoning code and now there's something called the floating zoning. What do you know? Can you explain that a little bit?
Yeah, so the floating zone, and I haven't been working too much on that, but the floating zone that they're doing right now in Rockville is essentially some short-term zoning updates that are recommended in the comprehensive plan that they don't want to have to wait 2 years to do because they're more pressing, I believe. But I can't speak too much to that because I haven't worked too much on that. Ethan.
Yeah, I don't know how much you can talk about this, but my understanding is there's been quite a bit of NIMBYism over the years, and that's kept the density that was recommended by planners down, and that's a lot of the reason that the businesses are in trouble, because initially there was supposed to be a lot more residential, and I'm not sure now, but I still think it's pretty controversial, and we have to wait and see how the new mayor and council come out for the town center plan, but also East Rockville. I live in East Rockville, and to me the zoning is completely ridiculous because it's right at Metro. You don't have to cross 355. Like if you walk down, okay, the parking lot is ugly, but as soon as you cross the street, it's this beautiful neighborhood, incredibly walkable and easy to get to. And the zoning is all single family within like an eighth of a mile of Metro. Also, they're going to change it to allow a few duplexes, but nothing like the density you really could have. So I think that's more a comment than a question. So I don't know if you want to.
Yeah, I mean, I can say that I think Rockville has had a lot of the same sort of housing politics and development politics that everywhere else in America has had. And one of the reasons that I personally find Montgomery County and Rockville very interesting is because it's a place that has been traditionally very suburban, but because of its proximity to DC, because of its metro station assets, and Ride-On is a huge asset. It's at this sort of conflict point of urbanizing certain areas and transitioning certain places away from their more suburban car-oriented uses, which I think is really important for climate change and for equity, for all those goals that we were talking about earlier. But in the same way that some of those things and feelings are beginning to change in other parts of the country, I think that's been reflected a little bit here as well. I mean, I think we were pretty surprised to see that density was the number one thing that people said. I don't think that, even just a few years ago, maybe that wouldn't have been the number one thing people were talking about, because I think you're correct that there was a lot more, or significantly more, housing proposed as a part of the revitalization process that didn't get included due to some opposition. But I think that potentially people have realized that that has hurt the downtown, because the businesses that they want to go to and the amenities that they want to see cannot be supported unless there's a lot of other people who are going to them as well. Let's see, I got a question from you before, so I'll go there first, and then over here.
You asking me?
Yeah.
Okay. So my question is about, I just heard what you said about the 75% of people are trying to rent here in Rockville, Maryland. But one of my concern is that there's like what's going on for the affordable housing shortages across Montgomery County, not to say Rockville, because there's like way too many people trying to find an apartment like me, because in 2020 I applied to the Main Street apartment, which is very close to the circuit court. It was very limited, is because what my feeling is that I think it's because let's say Rockville does, they sometimes need to trying to limit the sizes of the building, and it's just very concerning to see something like the rise costs or something what's around across Rockville Town Center, is because that's what I have to see recently, is because many apartments are like too expensive for anybody. It's particularly for the people who are low income, is because I have to see like a bunch of people, like younger students, when they finish college, they still live with their parents. It's because of what's going on across the apartment in Montgomery County and across the country regions. This is just a big concern of what I had to deal with. But as you know, I live in Rockville, Maryland for my entire life, which is great. But it's just the access to affordable housing, including state Rockville, can be relatively challenging for anybody. That's something I have to deal with it, because I'm trying to move out as best as I can.
Mm-hmm. Oh, well, thank you for sharing that, and I definitely hear you that is a huge challenge, not only for people who make very little money, but also people who are making a moderate income. It's really hard to find a place to live that's affordable. So that's certainly something that we hope to address, both by allowing for more housing to be built, and also by having more programs and incentives for gated, affordable, income restricted housing to be built, such as what Main Street provides. Main Street is a really cool and exciting place, but they have thousands and thousands and thousands of people apply, and they only have a couple hundred apartments to give. So we definitely need to scale up models like that. So definitely hear you there.
That's a concern to everybody.
Yep. We're here.
So one question I have is, like how is this feedback collected, and do you buy that, density was the number one thing? I just don't know if I buy it. But, maybe you only did an online survey, or like.
So this was specifically from the 4 listening sessions that we had to kick off the outreach and engagement process. So we had 2 in-person listening sessions at the library, where we had people on their phones fill out this, we had 4 questions that became word clouds. So it was what do you think of when you think of Rockville Town Center? What do you want to see change? That's what this one is. There were 2 more questions that we asked. So I can assure you that the data is correct based on what we heard at those listening sessions, the 2 in person and the 2 virtual. And then I believe we also added we did a very small group listening session with some students from Wooten, where we also did word clouds. So this is the data from those discussions. I think the people who came to those listening sessions were, not necessarily representative of everyone who lives within Town Center or who lives within Rockville. The data of who attended them, because we also did a survey of demographic data, was significantly whiter than people who live in Town Center, higher income, all the sorts of things that you kind of expect at the public meetings. But nevertheless, this is what people had to say. Yeah.
Is if we lower density, would encourage suburban sprawl. One of those things that we're trying to do anymore is to, we're trying to make the city, like, redo the city center so that it will be in the city as opposed to lowering density so they move somewhere else, move out to green fields. And the whole idea of the city making this a better place is the idea behind this. So there's less suburban sprawl.
I don't think he's saying that. I think he's saying that he's talking about the data gathered.
I know that how it's gathered. I know how it's gathered.
What I'm saying is that, I don't.
It's a selection, it may be a selection bias. I think James, it may be a selection bias with respect to who attended the meeting, but those that attended is what this is.
Yeah, we were surprised too.
Right, and people are probably going to call you out on it down the line. They're going to be like, we're not asking for this. What do you mean? Like,
So
Welfare
to,
streets decided by those who show up.
to add to that though, we had a survey that was purely an online survey. We had over 750 people respond to it. It was, still not, technically representative of Rockville and town center. The demographics were still like not on par with that. But one of the questions we asked was, what type of border would you like to see with the adjacent neighborhoods? And the 4 options were allow tall buildings throughout all of town center, a gentle decrease between town center and the adjacent neighborhoods, and a significant decrease between town center and neighborhoods. A significant decrease and only allow tall buildings in the very center and next to the metro station. And the 4th option was no preference, I don't care. Those were about 25, 25, 25, 25 split. Not exactly, but I was also really intrigued by that response as well. And that response, it basically remained the same split whether you just looked at town center residents, whether you just looked at people who live in the adjacent communities, or like anybody else. So we did try to ask that like explicitly, and that had a much bigger sample size of those 750 people. So I was surprised, especially, 25% of people basically said, I don't really care, do whatever. Another 25% said, yeah, allow tall buildings everywhere. The other 50%, a little bit more nuanced, but yeah.
I do wonder, maybe some of the people were saying opposed density or opposed kids on scooters. That'd be interesting. I actually had a question. I was interested, kind of 2 parts on that iconic train hall proposal. I mean, is there a particular development partner that said they want to build something like that, or is it just kind of a concept? Or so where did that come from? It's kind of the first question. And the second question is, is there any sort of plan to make sure that that was built in such a way that wouldn't constrain adding a 3rd track to the CSX line to be able to run bi-directional service?
That's a really good question that I don't know the answer to, but I will ask that. The first part, don't quote me on this, but I think that the answer is that this is something that is envisioned as the city paying for, and I'm sure the city would love if the county and WMATA and like whoever else gave money for that. But WMATA, my understanding is that WMATA has basically said like, we will replace the pedestrian bridge when it is time to replace it, and we will replace it exactly as it is now, and nothing more, nothing less, unless you pay for it. So I'm pretty sure that anything else would have to be paid for by non-WMATA people, entities. Yeah.
So, as a visitor to Rockville frequently, but not a resident, I come, to the courthouse or these other things, the library, and I see 2 cars running through Rockville, 355 Beers Mill. And the worst is where Beers Mill and 355 meet. That's a pedestrian nightmare over there. Like, just to run to the district courthouse or whatever to get across. If you're born on that side, you're taking your life in your hands to go across there. So that they're both SHA roads, and the city of Rockville has no control over them at all, as far as I know. But is there any partnership or anything that can be done to try to mitigate some of the horribleness, I'll call it, of those roads, especially
Yes.
where Beers Mill and 355 meet?
I think a lot, so for where they meet, I think that there's a lot that we could potentially say in this master plan about how that could be made better. So I'd be interested to hear people's thoughts on that. I think in general for both of those roads, everyone, and when I say everyone, I mean like the city, the county, SHA, like everyone is kind of pinning their hopes on bus rapid transit being the time at which there's going to be a lot of money poured into redesigning both of those roads. And so it'll be really, really important to get them right. And so one of the things with this master plan that we want to make sure is in there is requirements for a little bit of Veers Mill is in this master planning area, but not really a ton. It's mostly Rockville Pike / Hungerford Drive. Making sure that we're really putting the requirements in there for pedestrian infrastructure, for bike infrastructure to be a part of that massive investment project, which will hopefully be done sometime within our lifetimes. But I think that's what I would say to that is those projects.
Just one last one to take us home. We're talking a lot about the importance of all these buildings and all this population shift. How does the town center or plan specifically address concerns of pedestrian and cyclist safety and infrastructure in order to make it that every mode is able to traverse the town center safely and comfortably?
Yeah, no, great question. And I mean, the answer is nothing yet because the plan doesn't exist yet. So if there are any specific things that you would like to see, please let me know. Send me an email.
More bike lanes.
Yes.
That would be a good start.
Anything specific. I mean, I definitely got those down. And the city does have a bikeway master plan that passed several years ago that we will be building off of and incorporating into this master plan. There's also a pedestrian master plan, similar to the county pedestrian master plan, that is going through its approval process right now. I believe it recently went to the mayor council or is about to go to the mayor and council. And so those recommendations from the pedestrian master plan as well will also be incorporated into this. But also, I think we're hoping to see if we can go even further. Some of the goals in this relate to bike and pedestrian safety, as well as I think it was the third most frequent thing that we heard about from feedback is bike and pedestrian safety. So it's certainly something that a lot of people wanted to see. And in that survey, and I'm giving you a little bit of a preview because we haven't published the engagement report yet, but one of the questions that we asked was essentially, do you want to see sort of like road diet, complete street type of infrastructure on more roads, being like bike lanes, wider sidewalks, street trees, etc. And then would you still want to see that even if it meant slower speeds? And I think it was about 76% of people, or 78% of people said that they wanted to see more roads given that type of complete street road diet treatment. And when asked if they would still want it, even if the speeds were slower, it was 74% of people either strongly supported it or somewhat supported it. So there's pretty overwhelming support. That was another one of those questions that we were like, people hate having to drive slower. Maybe everyone will not want that. But overwhelmingly, people said, sure, slow me down. I want the roads to be safer. Yeah.
Do you have an analysis for what has ailed Rockville Town Center? Because fundamentally, that the lack of sort of vitality around Rockville Town Center as opposed to Rockville, or opposed to even actually opposed to Korea, is striking. And I'm wondering what that analysis is. Is it just density? Is there other kinds of analysis that you're working? One thing that has changed is the ownership has shifted a little bit of the town center, and maybe I don't know if you can speak to that and the sort of the downstream effects of that. But what is that analysis, and how do you think the master plan can even address that part of it?
Yeah. So I'm a big proponent of looking at things through like urban economics and like labor market perspective. And I definitely think that like population density is a big part of that. So I think that's part of the thing. My other theory would be that, people want to be in DC and the places close to it. And so, people really wanted to be in Bethesda. So there was a huge amount of demand for Bethesda. And then when the Bethesda downtown plan happened, Bethesda exploded and is now the Bethesda that we see today. But then going just outside of Bethesda, then there was a huge demand for Pike and Rose. And so Pike and Rose was developed. So there's a lot of demand that has been being met in a pretty big way, closer to where DC is. And I think that, people want to be as close to DC as possible. It's very attractive to be very close to that labor market. And then at the same time, in the last 20 years, Clarksburg was developed. And a lot of population increases happened in Germantown and Gaithersburg. And so there were a lot of folks in the more up county area. And if Crown wasn't there, if there weren't all the sort of like shopping centers and et cetera, Rio, if those weren't up north of town center, maybe people would have come down to town center instead. But instead, those places were built. And so why would folks come even further down to Rockville Town Center when they can go there? So kind of Rockville Town Center getting squeezed out by people wanting to be close to DC, or the population growth in the north that is not willing to go all the way down to Rockville. That's my theory from a urban econ perspective.
But how do you solve that with a master plan?
I think the main way to solve that is through more density, as well as through better transportation connections. And I think more regional transportation connections, more frequent transportation connections, that will make it a more attractive place for people to locate, as well as for people to visit.
So it sounds like the solution is ACT's top 3 priorities. All right, one more.
I just want to comment that it really is not that metro accessible. And I think that's a problem because we got MARC, Amtrak, Metro. There were people on Amtrak once they were saying, where can we eat around here? And I had to explain how to get on the Death Green Bridge and find it. And and I wonder if the BRT, how accessible is that going to be to the town center?
Yeah, so I mean, that's still in design. So, we don't know exactly where the stops will be, but the stops will be along Rockville Pike. So it would theoretically be more transit accessible, because you could get off, if you're coming from the north, you could get off on the Pike and just walk there more easily. But I mean, you're exactly right that the metro is a huge asset and a huge part of the reason why the people who have located their business or have chosen to live here have done that. But at the same time, Rockville Pike is still a huge barrier for a lot of folks.
Would the BRT make it worse, actually? Cross?
It will make it wider.
Oh, not wider, but
Wider is worse.
I mean, I think there's an argument to be made that wider could be better if it has a very nice median where you are waiting for the bus stop. But there's also an argument to say that, wider means a longer distance.
Or we could just take some of the existing lanes. Just, thought. It's not like we don't have a lot to spare.
No comment, but you should tell MCT your thoughts.
All right. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thanks, everyone. Please come up to our meeting next month. But we will be discussing Purple Line and housing costs. And please, if you haven't already, please sign up to join the Action Committee for Transit, because our priorities are what will make our communities a better place for everyone. Thank you all so much.